Good afternoon and welcome to this edition of the People Progressing Podcast. I'm really thrilled today to have Alan Hauge on. He's one of the all-time great Vistage chairs. He's helped so many leaders throughout the years, and we're going to dive deep into that today. And it's really a privilege of mine, being a newer Vistage chair, to get Alan on and get his mindset and his ways of doing things and stuff is really going to benefit us all. So, Alan, thank you so much for taking the time to come on the People Progressing podcast. And I always start by just asking, like, where'd you grow up? What'd you like to do as a kid? Did you play sports? Did you band, theater? Some of those things that kind of influenced you with your leadership journey, and just kind of give us an idea of who Alan is.
Well, Joe, thank you. Good morning to you, and thank you for having me on. Much appreciated. I grew up in a small town, Fairmont, West Virginia, north
Oh,
central West
wow.
Virginia, about 90 minutes south of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My dad had a small business. My mom worked in that business with him. It was a business my grandparents had started. It was a greenhouse, garden center, and florist kind of conglomerate there in the small town, a very small conglomerate. But no, my childhood, I think, was very, very typical for the late 50s, 60s boomer kid. Um, I, my parents really provided a very wide range of experiences. I think that's one of the reasons I enjoy being a Vistage chair so much, because, as you well know, the experience is so diverse and so broad and so deep. I played some sports, not very well. Was a guitar player for a while until I found out that I was really good at reading the notes, but didn't have any latent musical ability. I was never going to be Eric Clapton. That didn't go too far, but I enjoyed that. Education in our household was really valued. I had great role models in my parents in terms of not only how they interacted with the public and their business, but my father especially was um, a pillar of the community. He was president of the school board, very active in a lot of different things, and really set a great example for being involved in the life of your community. My mother was a former nurse, and really both of them really kind of taught us a good moral code in terms of being aware of what other people needed and who they were and how if they were different, that wasn't necessarily bad.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
we could use more of that today.
right. No doubt. I agree with you. And I look at your leadership journey, Alan, and what is it inside of you, or where did you get it inside of you that you had to help so many, that you had to serve so many, that you had to coach these people and lead these people and really bring people up, lift people up, encourage people and all that you've been doing for so long? What gave you that heart to do that? What do you think that came from?
Well, I saw my father's own example, as I said, in the community and in running his own business. He had leader written all over him, so I had a bit of a head start on that. I think in terms of my own leadership, I think really it's better understood as what I've done with Vistage is helping to create that community of leaders who could help each other. Like most Vistage chairs, I have several groups. And what you learn after a while being a chair is Vistage is the only place these people are going to go every month where everyone's at their level with no other agenda than to be helpful.
Yeah, yeah,
Everyone else in their life, however well intentioned, wants something from them. And I think what Vistage does is to create a community where leaders can become better leaders. And sometimes uh, you can only learn that from other people. You can read all the books, and the books are important, and you can take classes, and the classes are important. But as I'm sure you know from your own experience as a Vistage chair, what you'll see a lot of times is it not only the issues that people bring to the group where they get advice, they learn from other people's examples and
hmm
issues. Oh, boy, I'm going to go home and do that, or oh my God, I'm never going to do that. But they see different examples. The problem with being a leader is that it is lonely at the top, and a lot of times you're coming up. There's not a lot of role models around you necessarily
yeah.
for what you need to do. And the Vistage group is really a heavy duty, concentrated dose of that. And that's where I think if I have any contribution at all that I've made, I think it's creating those forums so that leadership can happen. I've been, I think, more of a catalyst than actually a leader per se.
Well, you're being humble because I know you're a great leader for those people as well, and they look up to you for that leadership. And it is. I say every one of our Vistage meeting is a master class. It's a master class in business. It's a master class in leadership. It's a master class. It's an MBA, and with leadership, it's an MBA in business, and it's a master's in leadership as well. Every meeting is that. It's so rewarding to be able to do this, and I know you've done it for a long time. What are can you tell like a real success story that you've had? I know you've had many of them, but what's a success story of one of your members of your Vistage? I call them teams, Alan. I call it a Vistage team because I think a team is people who care about each other, support each other, want to see each other do well, and so forth. So I always call them teams. But just give me one example of a success story for one of your members of your teams.
Well, I would agree with you on the team versus group thing. Group is something that's kind of embedded in the Vistage culture, so we keep using it. But anytime I send out an email to my group, it always says team, comma, and then
Yeah,
the.
yeah.
So no, I agree with you totally. There's numerous examples. Let me give you one that's very tactical and one that's much more strategic in nature, if I may. Uh, and you've probably seen this happen. I had a member whose plant burned down, and
Oh
he was
wow.
going back and forth. Fortunately, nobody was hurt, but and he was really going back with the insurance adjusters back and forth with them. And there was a fellow member in the group who uh, owned a lot of real estate, had done a lot of real estate development, and had more than a few encounters with insurance adjusters. And he just turned to the member and said, "You need to go get this particular type of adjuster. I'm going to connect you with that person, and we'll get this resolved." 2 meetings later, the gentleman whose plant burned down came back and said, Art, who was the member we all knew, Art just saved me $1 million.
Wow. That's awesome.
You know, and obviously, not every member gets $1 million savings,
Right, yeah.
but these are not infrequent. Where someone has a breakthrough, there's a connection, there's an insight, there's an introduction that simply wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Right.
And the degree of trust that comes with that in terms of accepting that advice is something that over a while people almost tend to forget about. Is when you get something from a fellow member, that's gold.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
kind of the realm. It doesn't get much better than that. So that is a specific example. Sometimes you'll get things. This has probably happened to you where I've had a member come up to me and say, a couple of years back, I had this issue, or we had a one-to-one session, or we had this speaker come in, and I did this, and this, and boy, it's made a heck of a difference. And what I've learned to say is, thank you, no problem. That's what we do. A lot of the times, I don't have the faintest idea what they're talking about, but they took something away from their Vistage experience that really made a difference for them on a really high level uh, aspect. I've had this happen twice in the past year. I had one member that I gave a 5-year award to, and another member who had sold his company, and we were bidding him farewell. And both of them said the same thing. I've got a lot from these groups that have made me a better leader. And maybe one of the most important things is I am thinking differently, very differently about what business is and how I conduct business than I would have otherwise.
Oh, that's powerful.
That's internal change. That's when
Yeah.
someone sees the world differently and starts to approach it differently. And that's just an amazing thing when it happens. And I think it's pretty common in the group to varying degrees.
Yeah, and it is like I said, it's so powerful to watch, and great examples. I've had some of those. I had one of my members basically made $550,000 extra one year being in our Vistage group from different things, and again, that's the teamwork involved, right? That's teammates helping teammates, and I want to get into the leadership piece of this. You've mentioned that word a lot so far, and I love leadership. What are you finding, Alan, is some of the biggest or toughest issues that CEOs today are facing? Is it more people issues or is it more strategic issues? Is it both? Is it economy? What are you finding right now in terms of issues that these CEOs are struggling with?
I think I can put there's and I think the issues are kind of the same as they've always been. The problem is that there's more of them and there's less clarity around them
Okay.
in terms of what to do about it. Warren Bennis once said that the difference between who taught leadership at Stanford, I believe, said, the difference between leadership and management is that leadership is providing clarity, and management is dealing with complexity. And what I'm seeing right now is a lot of the same issues, but with before where there might have been one or two variables in the equation to solve it. Now there might be three or four or five, or sometimes you don't even know what the variables are.
Yeah.
And what I think we do in our groups is really provide an ability to get the problem defined. It doesn't help to have a brilliant solution to the wrong problem.
Right.
And then really being able to provide from the people in that room a number of different options. But even with all that, I think with all the tools that we provide, what CEOs are seeing right now is, I mean, think about AI. I don't know your politics, but the tariffs are causing a lot of confusion in terms of, do I move forward? Do I not? And you also have people that, hiring and firing. And Gen Z is coming along. And Gen Z is a very different breed of cat to a lot of aging boomers. So I think a lot of the problems are the same. They're just more intense and there's more uncertainty than ever before, which makes what you and I do, I think, even more valuable.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times what happens is when you have if I've seen people make decisions that were absolutely the right decision, but it blew up in their face. And the reason it did was not that it was the wrong decision. It was around execution.
Hmm.
Execution was not good because there wasn't accountability, there wasn't clarity around the plan, and this is the big one, there was a lot of uncertainty and trepidation around the execution. So instead of executing boldly and decisively and aggressively, it was more of a two steps forward, one step back type of thing. And that can make all the difference in the world sometimes.
Hmm.
You can make the right call, but if you're not executing right, then you're still going to end up with a bad decision. So just to kind of circle back to your original question, I think a lot of the issues generically defined are still the same. There's just a world that is a lot riskier, and there's a lot more happening a lot quicker than used to be the case.
Yeah, that the AI is definitely making a difference, isn't it? And I've had Dr. Catherine Jeffries on my podcast and to speak to my Vistage groups. And I don't know if you've had her yet, but she's amazing. She researches the different generations,
Yeah.
and her work is fascinating. And you mentioned Gen Zs and you mentioned boomers and so forth. Boomers are starting to retire, Gen Zs are starting to come in, so forth. Are you seeing some issues with the different generations, and how can we help our business leaders with the differences in the different generations that are now in the workforce?
That's a really great question. It's one that's been kind of evolving over the past couple of years as Gen Z's come into the workforce. What I can tell you from what I've seen with my members is the CEOs, most of which are boomers, have had to learn that there's a lot that they can help Gen Z with coaching and mentoring, but they also have to understand that there are some things that not everything that aggravates them about Gen Z is necessarily wrong. Okay. They're different. They've come up in a different world. And so there has to be a little bit more of the boomers being willing to be educated by Gen Z.
Hmm.
I think the thing that really annoys me, when I was having dinner with a member last night, and this I should say concerns me, is there's a lot of Gen Z out there that do not want leadership positions. They do not want to advance in the organization. They're happy where they're at. And I think we have an obligation to really inspire them about the leadership journey and what it means and why it's worth the risk and why it's worth the commitment, because it will always require more to do that than to not do that. And we
Hmm.
hear a lot about life balance and among Gen Z, and they want 5 weeks of vacation when they first walk in the door, and I think that we need to do a better job of saying, yeah, it's hard, but it's worth it, and here's why it's worth it, and we're here to help you on the journey. And you and I are older, and I don't think either one of us wants to be at the old chairs home and not have, and not have good people running, not having good leaders, running the world.
Yeah.
So that's an issue that really kind of keeps me up at night. But it can't just be us as boomers saying, "Well, I've been a CEO 30 years, man and boy, and here's how you do it." I think there's a great writer, John Henry Newman, who once said, history offers lessons, not rules. And I think we have to extract the lessons and the principles from our own experience and distill them in ways that are both meaningful and effective for those coming up behind us.
Yeah, and I think it's too, after listening to Dr. Jeffries, I think it's really important for our generations to learn, to listen and learn from the younger generations. They Here's the way she described it. She described it as this. Our generations are, you go to work, you have to be there 8 to 10 to 12 hours a day. To, that's how you get work done. That's what it's supposed to do. And then she said the Gen Zs come along, and the Gen Zs can get the same amount of work that we're trying to get done in half amount of time because they know technology so much better than we do. And she said the millennials and boomers are looking down on the Gen Zs because they're done in 6 hours and we're still working. And the Gen Zs are saying, I've been finished for 4 hours now because I used AI or I used this tool or I used this tool and got it done faster. And she said, what the way she put it was, we need to learn from them just as much as they need to learn from us. We need to learn the technology. We need to learn some of those things that can make our jobs a little easier. It was kind of fascinating when she said that. I never thought of it that way. I never thought of it from their point of view, from the Gen Z point of view. And so it's a fascinating topic right now. It's been brought up in our meetings a lot, the different generations, and this generation doesn't work, and this generation, blah blah blah. In ways she describes it is every generation is different, and every generation learns and does things differently, and we need to respect and honor each generation and try to learn from each generation. I thought it's kind of a new concept. I never thought of that because it's always been the other way around, really.
No, I agree with you. I think the one thing that the boomers can certainly help the generations coming up behind them is really an appreciation of uncertainty and coping with risk.
Yeah,
Because and that's where our experience, I think, really becomes valuable because what's the old saying? Good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
so I think the Gen Z and that they can coach us a lot on technology and maybe some aspects of life balance that maybe we foolishly did not have enough of. But at the same time, we have a view of the world that says, it's it can be kind of scary out there. And if you're going to lead, you have to be out in front of it. If you're constantly reacting, that's not going to work. Sometimes you don't have any choice but to react. But it's very important that you get an appreciation for looking ahead and coping with risk and understanding when to take a chance and when not. One of the issues I've had to deal with my members for some time is entrepreneurs and CEOs tend to be optimistic. And so when they have problems, many times they're unwilling to settle for anything less than success or a great outcome. And one thing that I think that I've really contributed to my members is to give them permission to understand that sometimes there isn't a good answer, there's only a best one.
wow, yeah,
And
yeah,
I think we can really help the generation coming behind us because they've had a lot of coaching and as kids and through college, they've been in environments where to a great degree they've been protected. That's what we do with kids. But at some point we have to get them out there and saying, yeah, there's some rough air ahead, there's some rough water ahead, and here's some principles for how you're going to have to deal with it.
yeah. And it's funny you said that because John O'Leary, who you and I were talking about before we started, was on my podcast about 3 weeks ago, and he wrote a book, and it's called In Awe. And I say this on a lot of podcasts, but I highly recommend that book to everyone. It's a great way to live life. But he in that book described the Gen Zers this way, and he's not putting them down by any stretch. He said the generation, my generation was called the latchkey kids, and we invented helicopter parenting. And that was Catherine Jeffrey's description was, we came home, we had the key around our neck. Mom and dad were both at work. We opened the door, we're by ourselves. So when we became parents, we became the helicopter because we thought we needed to be there for our kids all the time. So then John O'Leary said the Gen Zers now, they have what they call, they've been raised by the bulldozing parents. And he said, think of a bulldozer that goes forward and it's just bulldozing all of adversity, all of stress, all of anxiety away from their kids so their kids never have to deal with any of that. And then they get out in the real world and we're wanting them to climb the leadership ladder and everything else. And they don't want to because it means there might be some stress, there might be some anxiety, and that's been taken away from them so they don't know how to deal with it. And it was fascinating when he said that, the bulldozing parent. And I'm not trying to put anybody down here or anything. It's just trying to learn about different generations and why they are like they are. And some of this stuff makes a lot of sense. But as we work with business leaders, Alan, what's the number one advice? And I'm not trying to get redundant here, but what's the number one advice that you can give people out there listening to this podcast who are dealing with something? They might be listening saying, yeah, I'm just having a hard time with all these different generations that are. What's the number one thing you can tell them to help them?
If you're asking about coping with the generational differences,
Yeah, yeah.
I think the very first thing is one to listen, and not only listen, be sure you understand,
Okay.
and be sure that the younger person you talk to understands that you understand. Okay. So I think a lot of that doesn't happen because as boomers were or older executives, we're just dying to give advice and we're just dying to bring them along. And, sometimes the shortest distance between 2 points is not a straight line when it comes to people. And so I think taking the time to sit and to listen and to be patient and to understand where they're coming from and what they need, not necessarily to agree with it, because I think we are there to provide guidance. And in a corporate setting, sometimes there's got to be yes, do this, no, do that, because that's how things get done. But I think it starts with the listening and the understanding. I mean, that may sound a little trite, but I mean, if you don't have that, you're going to have people that are talking to each other with just, there's always going to be that ball of kind of conflict or misunderstanding between them, as opposed to them truly understanding each other and Gen Z being willing to learn from the boomers and the boomers likewise being willing to learn and truly understand who's coming behind them. Because those people have to be coached to take things over. And at some point, it's going to be theirs to do. And we in our old age will be living in that world.
Yeah.
So whatever we can do to help them get ready for that is, I think, not only laudable but imperative.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. And I I love what you said about listening. I think that's one of my keys for being a great leader. I have a saying that you need to learn to listen so you can listen to learn. And being a Vistage chair has actually helped me, and doing this podcast has actually helped me become a way better listener. And it's important for the leadership to listen, to listen, to listen. I always tell people use the two holes in the side of your head more than the one in the front of your mouth, the front of your face. But as you've done this over years, Alan, what is the role, or trying to say this right, what is the role of women in terms of business ownership? Has that increased a lot over your years of being a Vistage chair? Has that changed? Are you getting more women leaders into your groups? What does that look like?
Well, there are clearly more women in business. I think we're still behind in terms of the number of women in the business community who would qualify for Vistage membership in terms of the size of their companies and all that. And that's due to past discrimination and any one of a number of other factors. I think they make great CEOs for a couple of reasons. One, I think they're better listeners than the men are. They really kind of come to
Yeah, I
that
agree.
for whatever reason, be much more effective. They're much more conscientious. They're much more diligent. There's a tendency when people are successful to take your foot off the gas and think, okay, I've cracked the code here. I have an annuity. Don't anybody touch anything. Well, that's when you really want to change things. I think women take much less for granted in working on their companies. I mean, in a prior life, I worked on a number of turnarounds, and I've tried to collect some data anecdotally as I've gone along, and I see I see fewer companies that get into trouble, I think, and I can't prove this statistically, but it would not surprise me to find out that companies run by women have maybe more consistent performance, maybe not quite the peaks, but probably fewer valleys than those run by men. And I think a lot of that is they probably hire better. They bring more people into the decision-making process, so better decisions get made, which at the end of the day is what it's really all about. And as I say, I think they do listen better. And I think you'll see. Hopefully, we've had there's slightly more, as I understand it, there is somewhat more of a higher percentage of women in Vistage than there as CEOs than there are women who are CEOs in the general population. So I think that's a good thing. Um, I'll also tell you that women who are qualified for Vistage by the dint of the size of their company are highly sought after, and you probably know as a chair, it can be very difficult to get in front of them. Uh, I have a number of great women members. I don't have enough, but every one I've got, I only got to through a very strong referral from someone who said you really need to be in this. So I think that um, women can really, I think they bring something into a Vistage group at times that isn't there, that wouldn't be there if it were an all male group, and I'm
Yeah,
grateful.
I would agree. The listening part, 100%. And they, it's fun to have a diversity in your group. It's fun to have that different perspective from different diversities in a group, and I love that part of it. Leadership, Alan. What you've been working with so many great leaders over the years. What are some of the maybe like the top 3 to 5 best leadership traits that you think make a great leader? After all these years of working with great leaders, is there some things that just stick out more than others that are just traits that people need to have as a leader?
Well, I think I've mentioned one, listening and understanding, but if I had to rank them, that would be second. The first one is, and I'm sure you've probably seen this, great leaders have this ability to have conversations with themselves. They have this ability to self-assess and they get outside themselves and to look at themselves objectively.
Wow.
And they do a better job of managing themselves than most other people do. Uh, they they're able to manage their emotions, and anytime our emotions get triggered, our IQs get cut in half. Uh, so I really think that ability to self-assess. I had a Vistage speaker once who said, it's the difference between being an egotist and an egoist. An egotist is a very unpleasant person. They're all about them. The universe revolves around them. The egoist is someone who has that very strong core and willing to take risk, but has the ability to understand there's actually two people in here, and the one's able to look at the other. Have you ever, it's in our language. I mean, stop and think about it. How often have you said, if I'm honest with myself,
Yeah.
or how could I have done that to myself? I mean, there's two things going on in here for all of
Mhm.
us. I think what really good any type of leader does is to cultivate that ability to look at themselves objectively, their strengths and their weaknesses. And as I think Peter Drucker once said about hiring people, they leverage their strengths to make their weaknesses irrelevant
Yeah.
uh, through other people. So I think that that ability to know themselves first and foremost is really important. And then the second part is the listening and the understanding. And then the third, I think, is an appropriate risk tolerance. Uh, Being able to, I mean, there's risk and there's uncertainty, and the difference is risk is when you know the odds. If I'm going to pull an ace out of a deck of cards, there's a definite probability to that. In the business world, it's uncertainty. You don't know the odds, and sometimes not even sure about the bet.
Yeah.
So I think the ability to cope with risk, both cognitively and emotionally, is very important because I know when I interview people for membership, I'm really looking for people who, I mean, I have a definition of what a CEO is, and I always share it because a lot of people who have that on their business card, they're not really CEOs. They may be lifestyle entrepreneurs, they may own a business, and they're wonderful people, but they're not trying to win, they're trying to not lose.
Wow. Love that.
And I don't think in our world, if you're going to grow a business anymore, I don't think that works anymore. I really don't. I mean, if I can, I mean, it was important to me early on to have an idea of exactly what I meant by what a CEO is. And I'll share with you a definition that I have that has served me well. And if it helps anybody else, great. The CEO is that person in the organization who is ultimately accountable for identifying, selecting, pursuing, and realizing opportunity.
Wow. Yeah.
Ultimately accountable for identifying, selecting, pursuing, and realizing opportunity. And if you unpack that, the ultimate accountability piece is you can't do everything yourself. You have to get things done through other people and hold them accountable. I've seen key executives really struggle when they move into a CEO role because the risk they have to take now is trusting other people when they delegate.
Hmm.
And sometimes it's a real shock to them because they want to keep doing what made them successful, and they're not going to succeed if they do. You have to get work done through other people. And then there's really four things. The CEO is out there to pursue opportunity. So you have to identify opportunities. You got to select them because you can't eat the buffet. You have to pick some things and not do others. I mean, I think I forget who it was. I think it was Michael Porter once said the definition of strategy was the things you choose not to do.
Yeah.
You have to identify, you have to select, you've got to pursue those opportunities. I mean, you have to execute, and then you have to realize them. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to make some bets that win. And to be accountable for those. So I always share that definition of a CEO with
I
whoever I'm
love
talking
that.
to and say, if this fits you, this is just for you.
Yeah.
This will be, if this isn't, nothing wrong with that, no judgment, but you're not going to have good experience with me because this is about trying to win and trying to not lose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that all the time too. I used to say that I was a coach, and I prepared all my teams that way. I always prepared my teams. We're gonna win, and we're not gonna play to not lose. And it's because every time we played to not lose, we lost,
Yeah.
and we felt bad about the way we went about it. Right? I mean, we had regret from how we went about it. That was awesome. That I love how you describe that, and it's gold. What's some practical business strategies that let's say I want to start a business, and I've started a couple businesses and maybe built them and sold them, or built them and they failed, or what's some practical business strategies that are just kind of 101 business that really you have found over the years that really help businesses grow and maintain and grow. And I always say it's positive discontent. I always want my leaders to be positive. I want them to give themselves a pat on the back when and celebrate the successes, but I also want them to be discontent and always looking to grow. So what are some of the practical business strategies that just you could share with people right now that maybe someone's listening who wants to start a business?
Well, there's a saying in the chair community, you probably heard it, the second worst thing that can happen to a company is success.
Yeah,
Because success will set you up for failure. Bill Gates once said, success is a lousy teacher.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
it seduces you into thinking you can't make any mistakes. So I think a lot of this is really less around strategy than it is around mindset and a set of principles that you're constantly operating on. So that would certainly be one. Um, the other thing is as I say, understand the difference between winning and not losing. And also, sometimes there isn't a good answer, there's only a best one. I mean, I have a member right now who may well lose his business because of tariffs.
yeah.
Everything that he sells comes from China.
Yeah,
Everything.
yeah.
And
Us
he's
too.
and he's also tied to the housing market. So it's almost a perfect storm for him. And one issue that we had in our group was, um, should you cut your losses? Is it time to pack up and come back and play in a different way in a different day? Okay. So I think you have to again, that gets back to that ability to assess risk. I think another thing is I really encourage my members to focus on the what and why before the who and how. What are we doing and why are we doing it? There's a tendency, the CEOs tend to be people of action. So they want to jump right to the who and how when they've thought of something that sounds really good. And I think it's important to say, should we even be doing this? And if we are going to do it, why are we doing it? And also having a sense of opportunity cost. What are we not going to be able to do because we're doing this?
Hmm.
Let's think real hard about that. You talked about what was it? You talked about
Positive discontent.
positive discontent. I think the wonderful book by Andy Grove, who built Intel into what it is called Only the Paranoid Survive, which is a more negative way, I think, of saying what you just said.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as chairs, our job is to be there for our members in different ways when things are good and when things are bad. And I think encouraging them to, yeah, let's celebrate success. Now let's get back to work.
All right.
Uh, let's always ask ourselves, what could put us out of business? Have we done our SWOT? Are we ahead of the game here? If we in 5 years, the one thing I encourage my members to do is a thing called a pre-mortem. What a post-mortem is, someone dies and the coroner goes in and says, here's what happened. Said, anything you want to do, if you're really enthusiastic about it, get your team around you and say, okay, let's assume it's a year from now or 5 years from now or whatever the time frame is. And let's assume that it failed miserably. Let's assume it blew up in our face. Let's ask ourselves, why did that
Hmm.
happen?
Hmm.
A little bit of a psychological trick. If you ask people why something's going to fail, nobody wants to be a downer. But if you say, here's your task, assume it did fail. Now let's figure out why. It gives you a much more nuanced approach to risk management.
Hmm. I always say we have somebody who's going through, they're going to be doing a big project and we're excited about it. And one of the things I'm trying to talk to them about is kind of the same concept of you have your plan, you have your processes in place. Now, what could go wrong in those processes before they happen? Not to say they're going to happen, but just in case they do, we're ready for them. And
Yeah.
we're not going to be blindsided by anything that could happen and get ready for them. I love that concept. You um, have worked with all types of different leaders from all types of different industries and so forth. What are some of the building blocks or some of the successes that you've seen in some of these leaders who build very successful teams within the organization? I think team is everything. And you said it earlier, you can't do this by yourself. And one of the biggest things that's been an aha moment for me coming from the teaching and coaching world into this world is how I understand it. Let's say I start a business and I've grown it to 10 million in revenue and I have people working for me and so forth. It's hard for me to gain that trust from those people because the person I trust most is me because I started it, I took the risk, I've made the decisions and all these things, and now to give that to someone else is really hard. What kind of advice have you given people that have that trust issue with delegation?
I think one way to deal with it is to be willing to be vulnerable in front of your team
There you go. Love it.
and to put out there, here's the decision I'm struggling with. And your team is owed clarity. Okay. And to say, here's what this opportunity is, and here's what the risks are, or here's how I'm really feeling about it. And I need your advice. I need your help to figure out what we should do here. The decision is going to be mine, but I don't want to make it without you. There's an old saying, people support what they help create. So for this, a lot of times CEOs will tend to protect their teams, or there's aspects of themselves or the real risk out there that the company's facing. And I think the leaders are, uh, unless there's a legal reason not to, are much better off putting the whole thing out on the table and saying, here's what I'm dealing with, and I have a plan that I'll share with you, but I want to hear your advice first. And then after that, the CEO may say, I'm going with what I thought, or, wow, that's a great idea, Joe or Mary. I'm going to, we need to incorporate that in. Um, but if people don't have clarity, they won't take risk for you. Okay. And the CEO has to have a team, maybe that won't take as much risk as he or she would, but people are willing to take initiative and to take some risk when the boss isn't around. And clarity helps provide that. Vulnerability helps provide that. understanding that the there's that they're not going to be punished for failure as long as it's not like negligence or something lacking in ethics or morals. But people, you probably heard this before as a chair too. In the Vistage groups, we try to create environments that are safe but not always comfortable, and we have to do the same thing in our companies.
Hmm. Yep. You have to have the tough conversations, don't you?
Yeah, so I really think those two things will go a long way, and I think there's also I think recognition is very important, not only because it's the right thing to do, but if people aren't recognized, they won't know if they're doing a good job. And if they have done a good job and they know it and they don't get it or see other people getting recognized, they'll resent it.
Hmm.
Okay. So the CEO really almost needs to be like a Hallmark card store. You always got to be looking for that way to say thank you or good job or to provide feedback. Look, this didn't work well, but I believe in you. Next time, let's try this. Or what coaching do you need? Okay. And coming from the CEO, that has more power than it coming from anybody else.
Big time. And empowering your people is is huge. I have a thing, Alan. I call it CPC. You coach it, you practice it, and you challenge it. And what I have found in not only the athletic world but in the business world is there's a lot of leaders who do a good job of coaching what they want their people to do. They do a good job of helping their people practice it so they get better at it. The problem I see mostly is they forget the last C. They forget to challenge it. And to me, that's where the light bulb really goes on. And I like to tell my leaders all the time, if you don't challenge your people, you're telling them that you don't think they can do it. And again, it goes back to that trust factor of I'll just do it because I know I can do it and I've built this company and I don't want to take the time to CPC it. I don't want to take the time to have to go through that process to do that. Have you seen that? Have you talked to your people about challenging people?
Yeah, and it's interesting. You kind of put your finger on something. A lot of times, CEOs in the moment won't challenge something because this is urgent. I need to get this done. And sometimes they think, I'll teach them about this later. Next time I'll do it, and then never comes. You know, so no, I've seen that a lot. Also, we have a saying. We invite CEOs into our vistage groups, and human beings show up.
Yeah,
And there are people that until they get tested, maybe they or anybody else doesn't really know what they're capable of. And sometimes being tested is confronting people. When you have to confront someone about performance or say, team, here's the bad news. We just lost an account that's 30% of our business. Here's what we have to do about it. So that again, that gets back to brutal honesty, the brutal facts, as Jim Collins would say, and
mhm.
putting it out there. They can take it. They may not like it, but you're going to like it a lot less if they go home at night not knowing what the heck's going on. People will put up, I worked on a couple turnarounds. People will put up with a lot as long as they believe they know the truth. I mean, I was general manager of a company in the early 80s that ended up going Chapter 11, and we finally sold it. But the guy I was working for was just brutally honest with the staff. And because they knew not only was he being honest, they knew he was being honest. And that created a lot of trust and a lot of stickiness with them staying there, where they could have gone to other places. So they could have found
Right.
other in the community. So I don't think you ever go wrong by doing that. I think there's a lot of people that in the moment they'll say, I'll do this next time, or they're afraid of upsetting their people or frightening them. And I understand that, but it's also wrong. It's not the way to do it.
Yeah, I got into this, Alan, because I read a stat. I was retired from teaching. I was a business education teacher, and I read a stat that said 70% of Americans are disengaged at work, and 85% of those 70 said it was because of the leadership they work for. And that hit me like a ton of bricks. I'm like, 7 out of 10 people driving down the highway every day to go to work are mad that they're going to work. How do they feel when they come home from work?
Yeah.
What is the responsibility of the leader of the business to make sure that their people get to come to work and not have to come to work?
in a word, the experience has to be meaningful. I mean, I'm not trying to oversimplify it, but
Yeah.
what is it about work that is meaningful for that particular person? People like to be in jobs where they feel appreciated, where they see a path upward, either in terms of promotion or in terms of more money or or other benefits. They want to work with people that they like and who like them. There was a wonderful speaker, and I think he passed away maybe before you joined. His name was Pat Murray, bit of a legend in our
I've heard
community
of them. Yeah.
on leadership and group dynamics. And he told me once, he said, and he told my groups, he said, what leaders need to do is to create organizations where people come to live their lives. Too often is I'm at work and then I'm going to go home to my real life.
Hmm.
Okay? And I've got several members that took that to heart. And one of them actually hosted the meeting last week. And when you walk into his place, there's pictures of everybody at all these events. People can pick charities to support. There's lots of recognition. They do lots of events, and it's expensive. He spends a lot of money on it. He's got almost no turnover,
Yeah.
and we've got people been there 15, 20 years, and they've drunk the Kool-Aid, so to speak, with him. So just to, it's I would challenge people. What is it that your people find meaningful about coming to work there? And they don't necessarily have the same aspirations that executives do. They executives may want to build wealth or get promoted or something. There's a lot of people that just want to come and have a good job and have a safe place to come to and take care of their families. And
Hmm.
that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But let's also make it a place where instead of, on Monday, so that on Monday they really want to get to work.
Yeah.
On Sunday night, they're not depressed.
That's what I just said that this morning to somebody that my my goal in life right now is to take away Sunday night blues.
Yeah, exactly. So I would say, ask yourself, and ask the people that have been there for a while. I would encourage you. You have some people that have been there for a while, and we've had a fairly strong labor market in recent years. They could have gone someplace else. Take them aside. They'll appreciate being asked. What makes this meaningful for you? What do we need to do better? Why do you think people leave when they leave? Just the very fact of asking them is such a compliment. Anytime someone asks our advice, it's a wonderful compliment. It costs nothing and it provides so many benefits
Yeah.
that you need to do it more.
And it's being vulnerable
Yeah, exactly.
because you might not hear something you maybe not wanted to hear, but it's being vulnerable. Where does the how important is the performance review for a leader? How important is that for them to do a performance review or review for their employees?
I think it's vital. The thing that I see in a lot of companies is that it's done the wrong way.
Me too.
It's done maybe once a year and it's done in conjunction with a salary review. And it becomes this titanic event that everybody dreads, both the giver and the receiver. Um, the best companies are doing it on an ongoing basis in the form of a one-to-one. Sometimes, I mean, I've had a couple of members have sales organizations and they have sales boards up that show where everybody is. Okay. And they're giving coaching to the people that want the coaching and the people who need it. Um, it's it's not that hard to do. It's just a question of kind of being aware of it and making sure that it's something you're doing all the time. I mean, and performance review doesn't have to be remedial. It can be, um, well, hey Joe, wow, great job on that thing the other day with the customer. It can be 15 seconds, and if done in front of other people, it's even better.
Hmm.
Uh, Acknowledging people in front of their peers is wonderful. There should be something more structured and formalized in terms of skill development. What have you done? We've provided resources. Are you getting better at this? And sometimes people, it's interesting. Sometimes we've had firings where as issues that were brought to the group, and it was, we don't need to fire this person. This person just needs to be in a different job.
Hmm.
Mr. CEO or Mr. CEO, you made the mistake of putting the person in this job when you hired them. You should have done a little more due diligence. You could have put them instead of in this customer service job, they belonged in sales, or instead of in sales, they belonged in marketing. Okay, let's look to keep what are otherwise good people, in the fold. As Drucker said, let's leverage their strengths and make their weaknesses irrelevant.
Yeah, I love that. And my philosophy is this. I think if people switched the word. So I'll give you an example. If I tell you, Alan, uh, tomorrow or next Monday, we're going to have our performance review. How does that make you feel when I tell you that?
Well, it's a little bit like my trial starts next week.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen often enough for people to get comfortable with it. It should be a process that people come to expect and look forward to. I don't think you can do that once a year. It just needs to be it needs to be part of the culture. This is how we do things around here. We acknowledge performance and we help people improve performance. And the review, be it anecdotally or sitting down with someone with a form, fine, but it needs to happen on a regular basis.
So I'm gonna switch the verbiage now. Alan, next Monday we're gonna have our biannual or our quarterly growth review. How does that make you feel?
That makes me feel better.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think if businesses would change the word performance to growth and do it like you said, where it's not once a year, it's not twice a year, maybe quarterly, maybe I heard a guy yesterday say, if you're not having a feedback with your people at least every 2 weeks, you should be fired. And that's pretty harsh, but that's what this person said. But I just think if you just put the word growth instead of performance, you change the whole dynamic of that. And it doesn't mean that we're being soft in that review. It means we're being honest with people because honesty is growth. Honesty is growth. So there's going to be some things said in the growth review that need to be said to help you grow. But the only reason I'm saying it is because I care about you and I want you to grow. And it just changes the whole dynamic of the whole thing there. And it takes the anxiety and stress, and now we're working with each other. And it's a pretty powerful statement. And it's something that I'm trying to teach to my people a lot in working with people.
Well, if I could add just one thing in there that's
Yeah,
really, uh,
please.
if it's not frequent and pretty full in terms of here's what we both need to know, what people don't know, they will make up,
Hmm.
and it is rarely good.
Hmm.
We do risk management by doing negative fantasies,
Hmm.
most of which don't happen, but all of a sudden they're there, and sometimes the supervisors don't even know they're there.
Hmm.
But whatever you don't know, they're going to make up. So the more that they hear the truth and know it's the truth, the better the performance is going to be.
Yeah, I am a John Gordon certified speaker trainer now, and the thing we say in John Gordon is whenever there's a gap in communication, it's usually filled with negativity
Sure.
somehow. So you got to make sure you're communicating and not leaving gaps. How hard is it for a CEO, Alan, to find time? That's one of the biggest objections I get from somebody wanting to join our group or team. I don't have the time. I just don't have the time. Do you find CEOs always running out of time? Is there time management skills that you work with? Or do you find the same things?
Yeah, I do. And a lot of times, what I'll do with prospective members is I just let the current members of the group handle that objection with them because they'll say, "Yeah, I'm really busy. I'm probably busier than I was before, but I'm doing different things than I was before." A lot of this will come down to it's failure to delegate. The other thing is sometimes you'll get CEOs that they've come up with their own organization. Maybe it's a family business or someplace else, and they go work on what they're comfortable working on, as opposed to delegating it or doing the things that really need to be done.
Hmm.
So a lot of the time thing is, somewhat as it's a, I think CEOs end up shooting themselves in the foot. It is lack of delegation. It's a preference. It's risk tolerance. Sometimes they just need someone to give them permission to do something differently. And one thing I've had a couple of members say to prospective members is, "Wow, the bottleneck's always at the top of the bottle, and that's you. I mean, you're
Yeah.
you're gonna you're gonna be that bottleneck. And if you can't go away for a month and not have a team that that you trust and authorize to make any decisions necessary except for maybe selling the company, then you have a problem. You're not really a CEO in a team. You're the owner and his helpers.
Hmm.
And that's just not a good place to be. You can't grow a company that way. And if you can't grow a company that way, you can't build value.
Yeah,
You end up with the company being a horse that only you can ride.
I love it. I always tell people if your people aren't growing and progressing, your company will never grow and progress. And I always ask this question to my leaders. I always ask them if, God forbid, something happened on the way home tonight and you were in a coma for 6 months, would your company survive?
Yeah.
And so many of them sit there and they look at me and they sit there and they say, I don't know. I don't know if it would. I don't think it would. I'm like, you got a problem then. Because if it can't survive without you, something could happen to you. And you're not delegating, you're not building your people up enough. I mean, that's your answer right there. You're not doing what for your people what you need to be doing for them to help them grow and progress. Um, Experience coaching and counseling. You've been a coach now for a long time. What's the joy you get out of it?
Wow. There's a lot of joy out of it. I think, I tell people when they come in the group that, the Vistage mission is to increase the effectiveness and enhance the lives of CEOs. So how does that show up as a practical basis? And for me, is I want my members to have the best set of choices that we can give them and to help them make the best decision from among those choices. Best choices, best decisions. And I said earlier, I've had a couple of members who say, I'm thinking differently about business, not just my business, but just I'm thinking differently than I used to. That's huge because we get them for a day, a month, and maybe 2 hours in between for a one-to-one. You know, I don't want them dependent on me. I don't want them dependent on the group. I want them to see me and the group as assets that are taking them to places that they could not or would not have gone otherwise. And when I see that happening, and when a member comes back and says, I've done things I would never have done but for this group. That's no matter what it is. It's wow, okay. I'm getting the job done. I'm doing what I'm supposed to do. And what's interesting, every once in a while we'll have a group social of some kind, and I'll have a spouse come up to me. And I had a spouse come up to me that was a 5-year member. I'd met her once or twice before. And she got me into a corner and she said, I just want you to know that our home life is so much better since Steve's been in this Vistage group. Before he was worried and kind of irritable all the time, and now he comes home and especially after a Vistage meeting, he's been recharged and he's got choices and he's just better at home and our lives are better. So thank you. Okay. Um, so that's the enhancing the life part of the mission statement. And I hope that happens. So it's just really Vistage is about change. Bill Williams, who was the president of Vistage when I started, said Vistage is about change. Okay. And so how do we help create that? And we have a number of tools for doing that. But when it happens, however it happens, and people tell you it's happening, that's that's gold. It doesn't get much better than that.
And you're the master at it. You're amazing. I have three questions. We've almost gone an hour already. I can't believe it. It's been fun talking leadership and so forth with you, with Alan. I've been looking forward to this. I told you that stat that I read about the 70% of Americans and so forth, but it forced me, it called me to write a book. And I wrote a book called The Three Ps, Finding Your Purpose, Perspective, and Passion. And I believe that kind of along with exactly what you were saying, that people don't have a purpose to go to work. I think you find your purpose when your purpose is greater than yourself. And a lot of people don't have that going to work, and that's why they get disengaged. So I have a way of trying to get people to not so much figure out their purpose, but to live in their purpose. And I'll explain that in a second. But I always ask every guest I have, what is your purpose? What's your purpose in life? What gets you up in the morning?
Let me give you a visual metaphor for this. because it's really important and it really drives what I do. When I get up in the morning, I see myself standing surrounded by rows of dominoes that go out into the future, out to infinity. Each of those dominoes is an event, but one event's not going to happen unless the domino before it got knocked over. You've seen the tournaments where they got the dominoes going all over the place. Our lives are like that. Okay. We do things in the Vistage group that, you know, a person is now, they have a choice or they make a decision they wouldn't have done otherwise. Okay. And we're dealing with members who are impacting hundreds or thousands of lives in
Hmm.
their companies. And so now we're impacting their lives. Okay. And so again, that gets back to best decisions, best choices, best decisions. If I can give the people I work with, directly or indirectly, better choices, the world is better. The world that I have to live in with everybody else is better. Companies do better. They make more money. And because they make more money, they can pay their employees more or provide a more meaningful environment. And maybe some kid of an employee gets to go to college or gets to go to a better college because of a decision I helped the CEO make. There's a wonderful book called Fluke, which really gets into how we all have the capability every day to make small things that knock over a domino that knocks over the next domino that's a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. And it cascades down through time. And the charm of that has never left me. And that the fact that I can do that with my members or help other members help members is just it makes a difference. And it's not just a difference one time for that person. Other things happen as a result of that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my act of faith is to believe that if I'm well intentioned about that, all will be well. Not only all will be well, all will be better.
Yeah.
That's as close as I can come to describing it for you.
Wow, that's powerful. I love that. So I skip over perspective. I'll go to that in a second. But what's your passion? What do you love to do?
Um, for me, it's it's uh, it's ongoing learning. I have a very eclectic taste in, I mean, history, science, philosophy, business. If I could read 24 hours a day, I would. Um, and also just the sheer diversity, and you appreciate this, the sheer diversity of people you get in the Vistage group
Hmm.
is something you don't really appreciate until you're a chair and how
Hmm.
rich that environment is and the speakers that you have and the issues and problems. I mean, you know, uh, my wife, after we got married, and I met my wife through Vistage, one of my members fixed me up with her.
Oh,
And
cool.
yeah, and we'd been married for a couple of years, and she said, you get more drama and more excitement in a month than most of us get in 3 or 4 years, and you've gotten used to it. So if and when you're retired, please, we have to figure out something else for you to do so you don't drive me crazy.
I agree with that. And I see that you're learning. The reason that you're always learning is to help others. You want to learn for your own mind and everything else, but you're taking that learning and you're using that in the service of others. And I think that's beautiful. And you see how your purpose and passion kind of support each other, they help each other. And what I do, Alan, is I have people draw a circle and put their purpose and passion in that circle. And then I have them draw a bunch of arrows coming at that circle. The monks have a saying that you protect your purpose so your purpose protects you. So I have them put their purpose and passion into a circle. The arrows are coming at it, and the arrows are the noise. The arrows are we had a bad month in sales, or the arrows are I just had three key employees quit, or whatever it might be. And those arrows are the things that are trying to come at us that make us say, why am I doing this? But then I have people put a big thicker circle around that circle, and that represents memory foam. And that memory foam catches the arrows, but it doesn't pop our purpose. Because when we live in our purpose, we are happy, we're rewarded, we kind of at peace, it's a good place to be. So I want my job as a chair, my job as a leader is to try to get my people to be able to live in that purpose. It wasn't hard for you to tell me what your purpose and passion was. The challenge for all of us is how to stay in there and live in that on a daily basis. You are very good at that. And I bet you're pretty good at helping people do that too. But it has to do with a lot too that I tell people it's your perspective on things. When the arrows come at you, what is a saying that you say? I got this from John O'Leary: have faith and fight hard, the best is yet to come. That's a good perspective to have, right? And that's the kind of glue that holds it all together, that holds your purpose and passion together. So, a long winded question here, but what's your perspective that holds your purpose and passion together, that keeps you in there?
What I do makes a difference. It's breathtakingly simple, but it's what I do makes a difference. It's changed lives, okay? And not necessarily me. Sometimes it's just the context I create. One member turns to another and saves them $1 million. Or one member's going through divorce, another member's already been there, and he becomes a coach and a mentor for that person outside the group. Okay. I'm, you know, it's it's really just about that.
Yeah,
You get right down to it.
that's powerful. And you said something earlier, and I wanted to get back to it real quick before we go. I have to say this. You use the word inspire. I think as leaders, and I hear people say this to me all the time, it's hard. I'm having a hard time motivating them. I have a hard time motivating this person, and my response to them is, it's because you're trying to own their motivation. I think it's hard to motivate people, but I think it's really easy to inspire people to motivate themselves. And you use that word inspire. So, in leadership, do you think the word motivation is used too much and we should switch to the word inspire? And how can leaders do better at inspiring people and not necessarily motivating them?
Well, I'm not sure I would divorce them. I think I would say that those two go together. I think if we inspire people, they'll be motivated.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they'll own their motivation.
Yeah. And but there are some people that you just never crack the code on. There's a speaker by the name of Jack Daly. You probably know who Jack is. And Jack said the best in terms of having motivated employees, the best thing to do is to hire them that way. And what I would add to what Jack has said is you need to find out when you're hiring them what inspires them. You
There you
know,
go. Yeah.
what could make a difference for them. And a lot of times that inspiration will be, you know, people show up uh, when we interview them and we're getting them on their best day when they got all guns blazing. And then reality sets in. I think we need to do a better, take longer to hire, find out what would really inspire them. And a lot of times the inspiration doesn't have, we think, as leaders, we're always looking for something significant, really big, a Churchill moment or something that's going to inspire people. I get back to the word I used about a workplace, meaningful. Let's find out something that's meaningful for that person.
Hmm.
They may have a horrible home life, and we can create the place where they come to live their lives. They may need recognition. They may never have gotten any. They may need coaching. They may need attention. That may inspire them. I mean, let's not make this harder than it needs to be. Okay, you were looking for this magic word or magic phrase, and sometimes that works, but I think a lot more times it's a lot more mundane.
I love
But
that.
I think we have to understand what will inspire them, and we can't inspire everybody. Sometimes it's just you need to find your inspiration someplace else. Let's help you move on.
Yeah. Yeah. So last question. How important is relationship building with leadership?
I don't think that you can have one without the other. I remember, I think it was a good to great. Jim Collins was talking about a guy who ran a very large company. I think it was the guy that ran Kleenex or something like that. And he said the guy was just a real introvert, didn't say very much, but when he did, he was very clear, and he couldn't possibly know the thousands of employees that worked for him. But in his research, I believe Collins said he said these people had a connection with him because they believed he was telling them the truth,
Hmm.
that he was clear, and that he was honest. And so that was the essence of that relationship because the larger the company gets, you can't know everybody,
Right. Yeah.
but they can know you. They can know your reputation, your brand, overused word. understand. But what are you putting out there? What do people believe about you? And um, if you can have interpersonal relationships, you obviously need to have with your senior team. That's great. But I think if you're out there and honest and providing clarity, again, that's the leadership thing for me is clarity. If you're providing that unadulterated 100% clarity, then people will know who you are. They might not like what you're saying, but they're going to
Yeah,
trust you.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
That's the best answer I have to it.
I love it. Alan, thank you so much. We've gone an hour, and I could go on a lot with you talking leadership and your experiences working with leaders and so forth. It it is amazing to me to think about the years that you've been doing this and how many people you've touched and how many people you've worked with and had such an impact on. I always ask my leaders if I went to the people that you're leading now, 20 years from now, and asked them who's been inspirational in your life and in your career, are they going to say you? And I can guarantee you that if I went to all the people that have been in Alan's Vistage groups over the years, if I asked that question, who's been inspirational, your name would be said. And that's a life well lived, sir. And you're still doing it, and you're going to do it for many, many more years. And it's an inspiration to me. And you send out a weekly newsletter that I get every week, and I share that a lot of times with my people and so forth. And you put a lot of time and effort into helping your people get better. And I appreciate you for making them better, which makes our world better. And you're a game changer. Thank you so much.
Well, you're quite welcome. And if I may, when I was kind of prepping for this, I wrote down a couple things that I've given my members to read, and if I could, I'd like just to kind of share them real quick.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
Just in terms of things that they tell me have made a difference for them.
Let's
One,
go.
Patrick Lencioni's first book, Five Temptations of a CEO. There's a lot of stuff there that is you will see in every CEO because they're human.
Okay.
Just an incredibly helpful book. Another one is Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Oh, I love that book.
As you know, Frankl was a psychiatrist who ended up in a concentration camp during World War II, and
Very powerful.
he wrote about his experiences. And basically, we have a lot of our mental health is around the meaning that we assign to events and to what happens
Mhm.
to us. So again, that's that self-assessment, self-management piece. And then the other is an article that I give to every member. Jim Collins wrote an article in Harvard Business Review called Building Your Company's Vision. It's short and sweet, and it provides a lot of clarity about here's the constitution for your company. Here's values, here's purpose, here's an idealized future. And it if you have that and communicate that, that's part of the clarity that employees need. They need to know where the company's going and why.
Mhm.
And they'll come along for the journey, but not if they don't know.
Yeah. We're doing a book study with my TA group right now, the newest Jim Collins book, Beyond Entrepreneurship B 2.0.
Yeah, I've got that. That's good.
It's really good. Chapter 6 is amazing. I think every chapter is amazing, but what I like about Jim Collins is everything is based on very, very, very extensive research.
Yeah.
And data doesn't lie most of the time. And I'm like, his research isn't lying here, folks. Listen to it because it's pretty extensive research. So thank you for sharing that too. Again, everything's gold here. People can learn so much. Again, I talk about every Vistage meeting is a master class, an MBA class, and this has been that hour for our listeners here. It's been another master class in leadership and in coaching and caring for people. And I think that's important too, that people get that the bottom line is you just care, genuinely care greatly for people in their well-being and in their success and in their growth and so forth. And that says everything about you. So thank you so much, Alan, for coming on. And people, thank you so much for listening again this week. It's been a great week, and I love listening to Alan and picking his brain on this stuff. And it's been a joy for me to have him on. So thank you so much for listening. And like I always tell you, please, please, please keep progressing and getting better. Take that step and take the next one and take the next one and have a great week. Thank you so much.